The member's right. I call the honourable member Denise Roach.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Green Party will be voting against this bill. We won't be voting for this bill because we don't see the need to meddle with stuff when there's no reason to meddle with it. This is a solution looking for a problem. Others have said that before me. There is no problem, so I can't see why we are dealing with this time-wasting bill and why it's being passed into legislation. In the last few months, there have been three main industrial disputes happening. One has been around rest home workers, care assistants and nurses and cleaners and cooks who, between them, care for the most vulnerable and frail seniors in our communities. The work is hard. It's demanding both physically and emotionally. At Oceania rest homes across the country, some of these workers have been paid as little as $13.61 an hour. That's just 11 cents above the minimum wage. And today comes the news that the Human Rights Commission is looking at these workers' pay and saying that they may be discriminated against because they're underpaid and their work is undervalued. Over the last few months, these workers, members of the Service and Food Workers Union and the New Zealand Nurses Organisation, have been attempting to negotiate a decent rate of pay, and they've had several quite short strikes to sheet home the message. Each time there's been a strike, and it takes a lot to get rest home workers, caregivers, nurses to go on strike. Each time those union members have had a vote, and each time it's been a secret ballot. When the Ports of Auckland Maritime Union members went on strike, when their negotiations over their collective employment agreement broke down over the port's unreasonable demands about casualising the workforce, they had a vote to decide if they would take action. Each time that they have elected to strike, they have had a vote. Each time it was a secret ballot. By contrast, these workers have been locked out several times, and they've been locked out illegally as well. They've been through mediation and facilitated bargaining, and they have a court case pending regarding some of the employers' unspeakable tactics to cow the workers into submitting to casualised employment, including the threat of losing their jobs altogether by being locked out. At no time was the Ports of Auckland Board of Directors required by law to first hold a secret ballot when they decided to lock out those workers, when they decided to take their own industrial action against the Maritime Workers Union members. And currently, we have the New Zealand Meat Workers Union members who work for the Tally-owned AFCO meat processing plants in small towns right across New Zealand, who've been in the throes of a particularly nasty dispute with Tallies since Tallies locked out 700 of their 2,100 staff on February the 29th after only 10 hours of negotiations around their employment contracts. The Meat Workers Union has a long-standing core collective employment agreement with AFCO. Alongside this, there are site-based agreements which provide for things like daily production levels, work speeds, staffing levels, pay rates, start times and finish times and shift patterns. Core pay rates range from only $13.48, below the minimum wage, to $15.76 per hour. And on top of this, workers are paid a rate based on the numbers of animals killed each day. The work is not secure. It is seasonal, 2 to 11 months per year, with many short days and short weeks, even during the season. Seniority, that's the last on, first off principle, is enshrined in the collective employment agreement and helps ensure some kind of job security for the workers who live in these small communities. Tally's behaviour since they took 100% ownership of AFCO has been quite simply appalling. The company has bullied workers into processing more lambs per minute without consulting them. It's chosen not to consult on staffing levels, length of the working day, wages, productivity payments and penal rates, and it's taken to re-employing inexperienced workers on individual employment agreements while not re-employing experienced workers who just happen to be union members. Many inexperienced workers end up getting hurt and leaving the industry. Like Ports of Auckland, Tallies has actively set about to bust the union. Managers have offered meat workers a 3% pay increase, a 1,000 attendance allowance, better jobs and more training if they leave the union. Workers have been taken aside for one-to-one meetings where they've been told to adapt to new work practices or be replaced. Understandably, many workers have felt compelled to accept individual agreements and leave the union as a way of trying to appease the boss. And while this has been going on, Tallies management have undertaken a strategy to lock out some of those members some of the time while expecting other union members to carry on working. This classic divide and rule tactic has unleashed exceptional hardship to over 5,000 children of the union members who have either been unable to work because they've been locked out or they've been on strike to support their colleagues. Since the first lockout, AFCO workers have taken 5 separate one-day strikes, 1 separate 2-day strike and more recently 2 5-day strikes. Striking workers are ineligible for WIN support. They are suffering and their families are suffering. Each and every time they have taken strike action, there has been a secret ballot. We do not know what, if any, process or procedure the Tallies family went through to make their decision to take their industrial action against these workers. And this bill, it's not even handed. It doesn't even address that issue. This bill is not needed. Secret ballots already occur. As the Employers and Manufacturers Association stated in their submission to the Select Committee, the Employment Relations Act requires a union to have rules that are democratic. That is under Section 14(1)(c)(2). And it also states the union's role is to promote their members' collective employment interests under Section 12A. Modern unions are democratic. They have to be, not only because of the Employment Relations Act, but also because with voluntary unionism, they will lose members or not attract members if they are autocratic or lacking in accountability and transparency. Votes around strike action are at the very heart of that democratic practice. Unions or union officials do not try to impose strike action on union members. This is a decision made by members, and it's never made lightly, because to take strike action means to lose pay, and there are very few workers who can afford to do that. Not only is this bill unnecessary, it's also meddlesome. One of the aims of the Employment Relations Act, Section 3, is around reducing the need for judicial intervention. Unions are incorporated societies. We believe this bill intrudes on the functioning of voluntary associations far more than is necessary. It's an undemocratic act. We oppose this bill because it goes against all good international practice. In fact, the New Zealand Nurses Organisation in their submission went so far as to say that, by implication, this bill contravenes fundamental rights of workers protected under the United Nations International Covenant on Environment and on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, Articles 6, 7 and 8, to which Aotearoa New Zealand is a signatory. And finally, we're concerned that this bill, if it becomes law, will allow unscrupulous employers, and there are some, like Tallies, to frustrate union members' industrial action by taking legal challenges. As union members from the meat workers or from the Ports of Auckland can tell you, there is quite a delay in getting your case heard in the employment court. This bill is anti-union, it's anti-worker, and above all, it is anti-democratic. I urge you to vote against it.
I call the